I'm going to start with Jay. So Jay Kamath, you're the founder and CCO of Haymaker in Los Angeles. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. I'm also
really
janitor and coffee maker. Really, whatever we got to do.
I think we've all been relegated to that, my friend. Like you can't take that exclusively on your own. I usually try to get a little bit of back stories on you guys, try to go as far back as I possibly can. I didn't do too much today, but I am going to bring up a couple of things, like maybe one, you can kind of maybe sing a couple of bars of the Usher's Nice and Slow, but using the Keanu Reeves voice.
Oh my God, that would be a matchup. That would be a versus. We should pitch that to Swiss Beats and Timbaland.
You should.
My go-to karaoke song now though is Enrique Iglesias's "Bailamos." That's what I break out.
Do you have the moves and everything?
Just a big fan of the Wild Wild West soundtrack, you know. So yeah.
I love that. I love it. There's also, I found, and again, if this is too personal or if it's something you want to talk about, please do. But I did find an amazing curveball.com, which I have to tell you, whether you want to talk about it or not, was just unbelievable for me to read that. So I don't know if that's something that you want to share or not. And if you don't, that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for finding it and taking the time to read it. I wrote a series of essays. I guess I want to say between 2014 and 2017, my wife was diagnosed with cancer in 2014, like 8 months into our marriage. And it was just a huge recalibration of our expectations in life. And at the time, my wife, she's a complete warrior. She's amazing. And she wanted to be private about, some people are public about, diagnosis and treatment. And obviously, I think anyone can choose whatever path is right for them. But my wife chose to be private about it. So because of that, because of that privacy, I kind of maybe found myself without really an outlet to express. So I just started writing with no intention, really, just more an outlet just to kind of vent or get my emotions somewhere. And over time, they just kind of began to gel together. And sometimes I'd share them with my wife, Seema. And she just really encouraged me to continue to write it. And because we thought, one day we were going to let our friends know what was going to happen. And we felt like it'd be really powerful to share our story, because maybe people were going through something similar, or they're going to have to try to, recalibrate their lives in some way. And so eventually I joined a writing workshop here in Los Angeles. And they were an incredible community that helped me really craft it, shape it. And that became the self-published series of essays. And I put it out in the world in 2017. And probably one of my moments I'm most proud of is Chase Serrano, who's one of my heroes. He's amazing. He writes for The Ringer, amongst other things. He put it out in the world. He shared it, which I thought was really cool. And we began a very, we just emailed back and forth a little bit, and it was really awesome to hear his support and his acknowledgement. It's meant a lot to me, and from our friends too after they read it. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I just encourage other creatives to put their projects out into the world too. I know it's really hard when we work so hard on kind of the things we do for clients, but I think finding, and there's no lack of, I'm sure lots of people have those creative endeavors, but it definitely takes up bandwidth of energy, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it to invest it and put it out in there, because you never know how it's going to come to life and how people will interpret and what they'll take away from it.
Yeah, well, it's thank you for sharing that with me, because I think it's important for people to put that kind of message out in the world so that people don't feel alone. So really amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And our next guest is Rob Lenois, CCO of Vayner Media. Are you in New York?
Yes, Vayner Media.
Vayner Media. So tell me, you started Fame, which is that still going on, or was that the one you started and let it then go out into the world, or what happened?
So that was in my previous agency, Gray. I think we had the name Fame, kind of harkening back to the hit TV show from way back when. It was an acronym, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it stood for. I think it was roughly rooted in kind of getting Gray at the time's MO, which was a famously effective work into the world. And it was built upon the premise of, like, if we're really serious, and we all are obviously about the diversification of this industry, we have to really look at some of the boundaries that really exist for bringing up new people into the business. And one of those boundaries we saw was just, look at where the agencies are, right? You got to move to New York City. You got to work for next to nothing. How the hell are you supposed to afford rent? So it was very simply a free portfolio school. It was like 12 students a semester. It was taught largely by people within the agency. And the hope was to, give people a realistic shot of putting together a portfolio to take a step towards this lovely business we're in.
Also, I found that you're an avid, I don't know if you still are, but you're very active on TikTok.
Active is an understatement. Yeah.
Do you want to share anything about that? Because I found some amazing, really phenomenal videos on your TikTok. So I want to just say thank you. So if anybody wants to view your TikTok, please tell them your handle and everything. But is there anything you want to talk about in TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we really talk about a lot at VaynerMedia is that everyone is a practitioner, right? I come from a very classic career where I did things a certain way. I would have ideas, I would push those ideas down. Hopefully my boss would buy into those ideas. Hopefully the client would ultimately buy into those ideas. But a very different world that I'm currently in now, where we at VaynerMedia build ideas up through social, right? It's we have a saying that we used to say we believe, but now we know to be true. And that is, we believe that today brands are built in social, right? The internet does exist. The ability to make content, put that content out into the world and see what's really resonating with consumers versus, taking a guess and throwing it out into the world, right? So my TikToks are very much myself being a practitioner, right? Trying to make, trying to see, trying to follow my own learnings by doing it. I mean, I'll be candid and honest. My first couple hundred views, and my last 5, one almost hit 1 million views, some creeping into the hundreds of thousands of views. And it's really just based on me putting myself out there and playing and trying, right? And I think that's the beauty of just social media now. Like, anyone can jump in, anyone can have a voice, right? What's so interesting about TikTok, and this is why we're really pushing brands to jump on there, is it's based on the interest graph, right? So if you think about Instagram, you think about Facebook, it was largely driven by the amount of followers you had, right? TikTok's completely different. Someone with 0 followers could make a piece of content for a donut shop, put it out there, and if it's the right piece of content, that donut shop is famous overnight, right? And the algorithm is still at a place where you can have that success, right? And this is just my playing on the platform, trying to get better on the platform. And honestly, I'm just having fun with the platform, but it's having fun and learning as well.
It is fun. I mean, there's some interesting videos I have to say that you shared, and I think a lot of people will benefit a lot from watching your TikTok, and certainly that's amazing. I know you're an avid biker. Are you still an avid biker? Are you still are you out there every day kind of thing?
About 12 years ago, I quit drinking, and I kind of threw my energy into endurance sports. Very much a personality rooted in more. So I do like Ironman distance events, but I absolutely love it. And I think it's also a place where, for me, I clear my head. I'm able to jump on a bike or jump in a pool or go on a long run. And, as a leader, as a dad, we're all incredibly busy people, it's sometimes nice to just have that thing you do, that pause, that moment you can just be alone with yourself. So yes, it's exercise. Yes, it's fun, but it's also kind of my space to kind of think about things, maybe think about my next TikTok.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for joining us today. So we're gonna get started. First question is going to go to Mr. J. So, this goes back to like, years ago when I was a kid and somebody asked me this question, and I was like, I wanted like Greg Allman, or his brother, like it was like these people that were like relevant in my time. But so you're having a dinner party and you could bring back to life, 4 people who are going to join you for the barbecue or the dinner party. Like who would they be and why? So Jay, you go first.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really great question, hard question. But the people that came to mind for me, the first one at least was Adam Yauch, who was one of the founding members of the Beastie Boys. I worship at the altar of the Beastie Boys. I think they're just one of the greatest music collectives ever, but they just infuse a lot of like not only great music, humor, creativity, all with the closest friends in their life, which was amazing. But he specifically, Adam Yauch, had like a really beautiful evolution in his career. They started as like, the fight for your right to party guys, but then he found like a different path. He got really into Buddhism and, advocating for rights, human rights, specifically, people of Tibet. So I've always kind of, but when you listen to or read or Beastie Boys book or listen to the audiobook, which I highly recommend to anybody, like you kind of really understand his creative process and how inventive he was. So he'd be rad to have. Le Corbusier would be really cool as a dinner guest. He is a Swiss French architect, so resurrecting him from the dead would be interesting. He was really influential to me when I was in architecture school, which is what I did before advertising. But he actually designed an entire city in India called Chandigarh, which is really cool. I got to visit that a few years ago. Nehru, India's first prime minister, kind of commissioned him to do so. So it'd be rad to talk to him about that. Then I thought Siddhartha Gautama, also known as the Buddha, would be pretty cool to bring him. And I think him and Adam Yauch would have some interesting conversations. And then the last person I think would be one of my ancestors, probably my paternal grandfather. I'd just so he could see how far we've come. I think that would be pretty amazing. He was a surgeon in India who like inoculated kids in like villages, and in 2 generations, seeing what the family has accomplished, it'd be pretty amazing just to get him up to speed on everything. So and just to see him again, that'd be pretty awesome.
Wow, that's a pretty a rock or an architect, a philosopher, and your grandfather. What would you cook him? What would you cook?
I don't think it would be a barbecue. Knowing you mentioned barbecue, I think all about ahimsa. So I think it'd probably be I don't know. Maybe we get like Treo's Tacos or some vegan place to come and help everybody out. Yeah, but I think that would be delicious.
What about you, Rob? Who are the 4 people that you would bring back to life and have at a dinner party?
Awesome. Love this question. Love Jay's answers, and I think maybe I've done this completely wrong. But when I read this, I started thinking of people, and then I kept coming back to the same thing. And I think the 4 people that I would invite aren't dead, but they're definitely gone. And this will make sense in a second. I would invite 4 versions of myself from my past to the dinner. I would invite 5-year-old me that was just this absolute wild-eyed dreamer, plop him at the table. First, I have to say this would be the messiest dinner of all time because I am a very sloppy eater. 5-year-old me. Then I would invite 18-year-old me that was just really reckless, smart, but probably a little bit out of control. And then I would invite 21-year-old me, post-college, deciding, to embark on a career in advertising. And then I alluded to this earlier. I would invite 39-year-old me. It was a moment in my life where I made the decision to stop drinking. And I just think that this would be a fucking insane conversation about learning from mistakes, about really the value of perspective being such an incredibly powerful tool in our lives. I think you have to be, I'm 50 years old, you have to be 50 to really understand the value that perspective offers. But I just think this would be definitely a fucking hoot of a dinner to watch. Just 5-year-old me spar with 18-year-old me, to the 22-year-old in advertising, and then the 39-year-old, looking back and going, holy shit, you all have a way to go, and just offering up a new set of wisdom. But I really love this question. And I have to say that because it got me really thinking about this, because I've never shared this before. I've never shared this kind of level of just maybe introspective. So I really genuinely appreciate the question. And I really thought about it. And I got a bunch of different questions from our people. And I was like, wait a minute, they changed the questions, because I wanted to talk about this question, because I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Well, I have to tell you, I so appreciate it on a different level that I appreciate Jay's. And I have to tell you, I'm going to preface this by just saying, when I watched your TikTok, there was one moment in time, you were on your bike and you were just railing about sobriety and being sober. And it really affected me in a way that I questioned myself, and I thought, like, fuck, like this is the power of sheer raw, like, realism happening on TikTok.
TikTok is all about authenticity, right? I made that TikTok, and seconds later, I'm like, holy fuck, we have Budweiser as a client. And I just went off on alcohol, right? Like, but I was like, it's me. I have to be me. I have to be authentic. I have to be real. And like, it also tells our agency, like, put your truth out there, put you out there. That's one of the things I talk all the time to our creatives. Like, I don't need another version of me. I don't need you to be carbon copies of each other. I want you to be yourself. I want to see you in your work. And you may find that you are cracked up to do this, or you might find that you're not made for this. And that's totally okay. But I don't want you changing who you are. I want you to put your truth out there.
I remember the moment that I realized the power of generations coming into advertising and how they affected it, when people were not buying Nikes any longer because they didn't like their politics, or they didn't like a certain thing, and they were like, I want to know who the fuck these companies are. And for to be that authentic, I think, is what everybody demands today. But to go one step further, when you talk about who the 4 people that you invite to dinner, and there's a question that I always throw in sometimes, depending on who the guests are. And I just go, what would you tell, knowing what you know now, your 5-year-old or your 8-year-old self? And it stumps people for a moment, you know what I mean? But the truth is that experience, and that what you've gained as a 50-year-old can only be appreciated, at this moment. But somebody might just listen to what you have to say, both of you, and go, you know what, let me think about this. Maybe I have a chance at 15 or 20 or 28, my first job, to do something that may change the destination of the trajectory of who I'm going to be in this life, in this world. So I appreciate it. Very powerful. Thank you so much. Question number 2. What's the most difficult decision you've made in the last 2 years? And how did you come to that decision? And again, I think the reason for asking this is because I think we have so many difficult, decisions to make every day, as leaders, as just humans, as fathers, brothers, mothers, uncles. So it can be any part of your life or your work. So I'm going to go with you first, Jay.
Sure. First off, Rob, that was a beautiful answer, man. That really made me think about that differently, which is really cool. I think the most difficult decision I'm confronted with on average every 3 to 4 hours. And that is, how do I raise my son to be resilient, but still honor his emotions? Wow. That has been the challenge. And I do not have the answer. Like I feel like some days I'm better at it. Some days I don't know. I fail, but that has been, that's been the beauty of the pandemic. Obviously, I've had more time with him, and I've been able to spend more time with him, see him grow. He'll be 4 in November, and I love him more than anything in the world. But I feel like that has been the challenge. I'm like, how do I set him up for success in this world? But is there a way for me to do it in a way? And I love my parents, but obviously, like, I have some, like, they're like, the way I was brought up has instilled like values in me, but I'm like, cool, can I spare him from some of the things that I endured. How do we do that? How do I do that? And I'm navigating that the best way I can. But that's what came up to me. And luckily I have a lot of opportunities to figure out how to do that. But yeah, that's what came to mind for me.
I love that. Look, I mean, I think, as a son, I'm not a father. I don't have any kids, but I got to tell you, I think, you have until the day that you pass, or, to keep trying. And, and I think that's all we can do as humans, is just be every day the best that we can be for ourselves and for the people that we love. And I so appreciate that. That's amazing. What about you, Rob? What is the most difficult decision that you've made in the past 3 seconds, or the past 2 years, or however many?
Jay got me thinking, and I was like going to go that route as a father. Then I realized I would probably start to tear up. So I'm not going to go that route right now, but that was a good answer. Mine is work related. And I think I talked about this a little bit coming in, like coming from Gray, where it was much more of a classically driven big idea agency, to an agency that is more fueled by social media. I had to take a big step, and if I'm being really honest, it took me well over a year of coming into this new role, to where I finally, like, I didn't completely let go of my industry, but I changed my perspective on how I view work. Right? I used to just have a very big opinion on what I thought was good, what I thought made the work great. But now I'm very open to kind of trying new things, definitely in social media, and seeing for real, like, where they go, right? I can make a TikTok that I think's the best fucking thing in the world, and it gets 300 views, right? I go make something else, all of a sudden it gets millions of views. That to me is now good. It's no longer just my opinion of what I think is good, but something that goes into the world, and you can see the real effect it has. And if I'm being really honest, my humility wasn't where it needed to be for quite some time before I really realized that. Because I was used to doing things a certain way. I was used to having my opinion on what I thought was good work. And now, I'm very intimately aware that the internet exists. You can put things into the world. You can actually see for yourself whether they're truly good or not, right? And that's kind of something, I don't know if it's a decision or a realization, probably more realization, that I've had that wasn't very easy, right? I've done it a certain way for 20 plus years. It was good because I said so. Now good is because it is so, which is just very, very different.
It was like 2019 or 2020. You said in an interview, you said, going forward, this means being truly open-minded on what is considered good, leading with that rather than ego, which I thought was very interesting. Not always having to be the one with the answer, but promoting a workspace that's conducive and judgment-free to get to the right answer, where everyone from the bottom is up is comfortable sharing ideas without a fear of getting shot down. The same applies to working with clients, creating a collaborative culture of make and share together versus the traditional present and pray. And I thought that was just really profound, and kind of, I guess, the same journey that you've been on for a long time.
Yeah, it has. I really appreciate you reading that back, because I was like, shit, I said that. But but I truly believe that now. And if I'm being really honest, when I wrote that, it was probably more words in academia. Now it's just it's a deep belief.
Yeah, well, it's what we are what we write, Jay. we are what we live. The third question is going to come from Phoebe, if you will.
It's super interesting that you've got to that point about kind of reevaluating, I guess, yourself and your beliefs over the past couple of years. Because for me, the third question we wanted to ask you guys about your go-to location to unwind, the place you go to de-stress. And personally, I found that the lockdown and the pandemic really flipped what I found relaxing. So when I used to be in the office 5 days a week, if I got really stressed, I'd go have a walk in like the National Portrait Gallery around the corner, mainly because it was deadly silent. And I just got that moment to think and look at something different. But these days I found, having been locked in the house and missing that kind of social aspect, I seem to throw myself more into busier, vibier situations around the office and around London, rather than the quiet spaces. So really, I wanted to ask you guys whether that place has also changed and where you go to. Jay, probably great to start with you.
Sure. I mean, there are a couple places that come to mind for me. So like I mentioned earlier, I live in Culver City. We live on a really nice street that has some Chinese elms. God bless the person who planted them. But because I just go for a walk. I just go for a walk on Vinton Avenue, and I just try to clear my head. One, just to be mobile and move. There's a lot of things like, we kind of get into our default setting, and there's so much to be done. But that has helped me a lot. So it's sometimes with music, sometimes without, I think just hearing natural sounds, walking, meditation, kind of doing that has been hugely helpful for me. That's me solo. If I go with my family somewhere, one of our favorite restaurants, it's called Cafe Brazil. It's this very small Brazilian restaurant, very colorful. There's a very nice woman who runs it, who gives my son free watermelon, which he just enjoys. So it feels very much, it feels like very much like a happy place. Everyone's very content there. And then I think when things started to open up, like last year, my wife and I, we went to Big Sur, and that was just an incredible place. Like I think I try to transport back there when I'm having a hard day. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, when can we go back there? Because it was just so beautiful. And so it was like a nice place to like kind of relax and kind of reset.
Have you been back since, or just the one time?
No, it's really funny you mentioned that, because my wife was like, we should go back. And I'm like, yes, we should. But we'll figure out when that is. My son just really enjoys the outdoors too. We've been to Yosemite, and he just literally spent like half a day just throwing rocks in a pond. And I could just watch him do that all day. It was really beautiful. So we might go to Zion, or like, another national park. Something else might be fun to do in that realm that we all get a lot of joy out of and feel at peace.
It's so interesting, actually, because I don't know if you have this in the US, but in the UK, certain areas of the country have started, actually, doctors are prescribing time in nature to patients because of the actual benefits it has to your stress levels, which also reduces many other, biological effects of that kind of overstress. And yeah, it's super interesting to hear you say that. And I think there's actually a biology in it as well, I think.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And I think it speaks to the massive chasm between the healthcare system in this country versus yours. Because, yeah. But that's a beautiful idea. That's really cool.
Yeah, we'll get the US to look into it.
Yeah.
And how about you, Rob?
I think that the pandemic has obviously taught us so many different things about ourselves, about each other, about our surroundings. I think one of the things that I can probably thank the pandemic for is I kind of realized that there's really no such thing as life-work balance. You have to either be in one or the other. And it's trying to balance the two, at least for me, just becomes an absolute mess. Like my brain is always filled with lots of different things, and I've got to turn off one to focus on the other. And that's just something that I've just learned, maybe over time through perspective, or maybe the pandemic kind of advanced that. Mentioned this earlier. For me, unplugging is jumping on a bike or jumping into a pool or deciding to run a dozen miles or something. And what's interesting on these runs is I may drift into work. I may drift into being a better father, but it's just my head is completely clear and I'm able to focus on one and then the other. It's just when I try to do the jumble in my head of the balance, I'm a fucking colossal mess. And I'm good at doing one thing well. I try to do 50 things, and we're all like trying to juggle so many things. I just have found for me, just picking a clear lane and not trying to balance it all has allowed me to have more success.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think with the but with the Ironman stuff as well, I mean, they're hardcore. I've done a triathlon before, and I kind of gave myself a huge big pat on the back for that. But hearing when someone's done an Ironman, like, that's a lot of work that goes into that for something that's also an unwinding thing for you. I mean, the physical stress of that is quite high, no?
The thing about Ironman was just fun and worth sharing. And I always ask people this, and sometimes it lands. Like, so I'll ask the group, what do you think the most difficult aspect of an Ironman is?
For me, I think it would just be, deciding to do it. I don't know.
There it
like,
is. That's it. But that is the answer, because once
yeah,
you make that mental decision, I
yeah,
think you're both there.
yeah,
The body has this wild
yeah,
way of
yeah.
figuring out how to get to the finish line.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think that I kind of know that because, in 2014, I was working for a different company, and we would do the normal thing. We'd get a boat, and our boat was like about 90 people, and it was a big catamaran, and it was not the party boat. It was just like the kind of the calm boat. But after that happened, I would rent a scooter, and I just literally got on that scooter, and I would take a day, and I would just go anywhere by myself. I would go like early in the morning. I would get a baguette and a Diet Pepsi or whatever it was, and I would just like with a beach towel. I'd buy a new beach towel at some little store every time, and I did that for years until until the pandemic hit. And I've recently moved to Florida, pre-pandemic. Don't judge. I live by the beach, really close to the beach.
Jealous.
I know, right? And I bought a Wolf scooter, and it's my just ultimate pleasure every day is and I lived in California for 35 years, and I went to the beach 10 times in 35 fucking years, 10 times, right? Literally went to the beach. I get on my scooter every morning, and I like I go over the Intercoastal Canal. I'm literally like 5 minutes away, and I park my scooter, and I walk this beach, and I go into the fucking Atlantic Ocean. And I'm telling you, it was a mindset, because I decided I was going to do that 3 years ago when I decided I was going to leave LA. And it was a decision that I made like then, and so I think you're right. Like, that's phenomenal. But anyway, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's amazing what the power of a decision can be, and how it can affect your life and others. So moving on, number 4, the pandemic changed a ton about our personal lives, of course, we all know that, but and I don't know that it's for better or worse. I don't know how anybody can gracefully say, but I'm looking for some way to say it gracefully. I do think that there were some more atrocious things that came out of the pandemic, but I think there were so many beautiful, amazing fucking things that came out that I think we have to really look at that. So how has it changed the way that you guys operate at home and at work, just in the long term? And I know we're 3 years into it, but how has it changed?
Working from home obviously has kind of changed the parenting dynamic. I think the macro effect, I think for me, is that us being isolated, I think we realized truly how biologically social we are as like human beings, right? And as much as it's fun to hole up alone and Netflix and chill with like a 2-pound bag of Skittles, like, we're inherently social creatures that like to be with each other. And I just think about like our need for attention, like my need for attention, my children's need for attention, right? That has gone up exponentially. I think about my agent, our agency, the department, their need for attention. And like, in some weird way, like, Zoom has enabled more frequent contacts, more frequent connects. Like, I've gotten closer with definitely a lot of my leaders, definitely with a lot of my people in department, just because of the frequency and the ability for us to, not commute in the morning and spend, 20 minutes with 12 people just shooting the shit, right? So like, my understanding of a need for attention and really wanting to give it as much as possible has really gone through the roof as a father, but also as a leader.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, that is a gift that we've certainly all received from the pandemic. We it's not that we wanted it. It's not that we like chose it. We were forced to just fucking be. And you can only be with yourself so long. So you had to make a decision like, okay, so how do I get to know myself so that I can be a better person? I love that. What about you, Jay?
Yeah, I think a few things that Rob said earlier, resonated with me. I totally hear what he's saying about work life and, does that balance exist? Is it a porous thing that just it's more like they kind of bleed into each other? I'm not sure what it is, but I think what I've learned the most is about boundaries, I would say. Because I think when you own your own company, Haymaker, we're a small business. Any downtime I have, there's something that could be done for Haymaker. And I think my wife has been incredibly supportive, but also helpful for me to kind of understand. It's like, hey, you don't always have to have your foot on the gas. It's okay. It's like, this is a moment to like, no, let's enjoy some family time and like, let's just all hang out together, or me and her just be together and connect. So I think that was a huge learning. I think because I think that feeling was amplified even more so by the pandemic of like having to always be on. Something can be done. We look at our Google calendars, like it is back to back to back to back. I'm sure Rob's calendar is the same way. It's like, there's just a lot going on. And I think it was like a nice moment to pause and be like, okay, well, like, what is the boundaries I can set up here? How can I separate them the best I can? And to Rob's point, sometimes they do bleed together and sometimes that's, good. But sometimes I felt like the need to like, to try to figure out a way to do that and create some separation. But yeah, that's probably been the big takeaway. It's also been one massive act of resiliency and empathy for each other. I think that would probably be the big thing. I think with other people in the company, I think you just understand we're all kind of going through the same thing, and you're like trying to figure out like, well, if I'm going through it, I'm sure someone else is probably going through it, and being vulnerable and kind of articulating that is okay. I think people like that. That's helpful, I found, at our company, so people kind of understand they're not alone.
When you talk about other people in your company and having empathy, and that we're all going through the same thing. I mean, look, as leaders, you want what you want when you want it, the way you want it, unless you change your thinking, as Rob did, and probably you have. But there's that moment where you are angry about the fact that you're not getting what you want. And I think the pandemic has truly made us more empathetic, and not that that's the catchword, because it is one of those words that is overused, or maybe not overused, but I do think that is one of the things that I've seen and I've heard from most all the guests, is the empathy for other people, and being able to stop for a moment and going like, does it really matter? Like, I didn't get my way, or they didn't do it right, or whatever. Like, we're still here and we're still healthy. So I love that. I think
it is a dance. I feel very fortunate as a creative. We were able to go on productions. So even though when things were locked down, creatives would kind of come together and be on a set, and you'd experience that real-time collaboration that you miss from, I mean, there's only so much this can do, right? It is great. I can literally connect with anyone else in the world, but being at a table and like sketching something in real time or whatever it is, it's really hard to create a substitute for that, in my opinion. I mean, it's totally cool if other people disagree, but from our experience as a company, that's what's been lost, and we're trying to get back there. Even if it's like in sporadic bursts, it's like, cool, like we're all together, let's like, we can jam, great. And so how do we find that, the best of both worlds if possible?
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I find like a lot of the conversation about returning to the office and whether we have a hybrid setup or we're back full time or we're fully remote, I think a lot of those decisions tend to hinge around productivity and well-being. They don't always necessarily focus on creativity, which really is the crux of everyone's business here. And we're starting to get some people come out there and talk about, are these environments conducive to creative thinking and applied creativity? And I don't know, are they? Like, I'm not sure. I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, I think every company needs to find their own way, obviously, but you're right, it's filled with different personalities who are creative in different ways. And I think it's just having spaces that can, like, I don't know, complement different people's processes, which is hard. It's hard to do, especially when you're a startup. But I think it's a worthwhile goal, it seems, to try to figure out what that can be. It doesn't feel like it's one way. It's like, all open space, everyone can talk to everybody. Does not make that seem the way to go. Nor is it like everyone in cubicle, like in their own little cave. Like, that doesn't make sense to me either. So I don't know what that dance is going to be. Or Rob, I don't know if you have been kind of navigating those waters as well, and what I'd be curious what you found.
Never ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's kind of happening in real time with hybrid, kind of people being, Zoom at home, not at home, sometimes at the office. And, I think that's how people creatively like click, it seems, what we're seeing, but thanks for that. So the fifth question is, when I say seniority, I'm not calling you guys old, because God knows I'm older than all of you, but given your seniority, you must have been interviewed many times, which I'm sure you have. I've seen quite a few interviews that you guys have done. With that in mind, what are the key attributes you're looking for when you're interviewing somebody like a new employee or somebody potential, a new creative or a new anybody in your companies? Rob, we'll start with you.
Absolutely, and kind of similar theme on a little bit of the journey I've been on. Like prior to where I am currently at VaynerMedia, I was very much about the portfolio. I was very much about past work being a predictor of future success, and largely I still am. I believe that you make great things, you're great creative minds make great things. I think where I've shifted slightly is I think I really now look to see the person. I really, really look to see the person. I think I hire heart over head. I think, I growing up, growing up, I still am an overachiever, like never the smartest, never the most creative, never the fastest, but always had a tremendous amount, what I call give a fuck, like a desire to push through. And I look for that in people. I look for the person that is gonna just outwork, out dig in, out insight, out push, right? A real high level of give a fuck, like real heart, first, right? And I've gotten burned, candidly, like really being seduced by the work over the heart. And it's really, since I've really kind of let go and just let the person be the guide, I've really had better success in my hiring, just straight up. Yeah, I mean, that's really it. Like really looking at someone's heart over their head and making a decision.
Interesting. I mean, and when you say like, is this like in an interview, whether it's Zoom or in person, like you can feel the heart? I mean, I don't know if it was you or who said, but a lot of people today look at if they're looking at somebody's profile or they're looking at somebody's website, they look at the about first. You know what I mean? It's like
that's probably definitely a way to go. But like, what is? I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of an interview. I will literally spend 1 hour not talking about the job. Like just talk about who you are, what you love, what makes you tick, like really trying to get a sense of the person. And then we can talk about where we're going, right? Like, cause we spend so much time with people like this. And I think one thing that Gary Vaynerchuk, one of many things he's gotten very, very right is the leadership team is they don't not only complement each other professionally, but they're friends, right? They understand each other. They root for each other. Like this is one agency, like it's devoid of politics because everyone is just there for each other. And it's, that people joke, it's like a cult. It's not like a cult. Maybe it is like a cult, but it's much more like a family. And that just, you're going to spend this much time and energy with people day in and day out. It's good to be surrounded by really good people that have each other's back. So that's the number one thing I look for.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Jay?
Yeah, I think a lot of things that Rob said are true for me as well. I would say the qualities that I look for are people who are driven, people who are generous, and people who are excited about making things and building something. Making stuff, the stuff we make is hard to make. Haymaker, we're about 30 people. Like we're also building something, and like that requires a different set of muscles too, and just having like a desire and ambition to kind of want to be a part of that. And so I look for a conversation and stories from the people that kind of maybe inform or kind of shed light on those kind of attributes. Because I think Rob's totally right. I want to hear about the person. Like, tell me about yourself. Like, what makes you tick? All those things are really important because I want to get a sense of the person who's going to be in the trenches with us when it's 2 a.m. and there's cold Thai food on the whatever counter and we're all like jamming on a pitch or something. Like I think that's, those are all things that are really important. But Since Haymaker is like a bit of a startup, I think it's about finding people who are really interested in that kind of opportunity, about building something.
I love that.
Very similar DNAs, Jay.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. I do find that is the best people to be surrounded with are people who feel like family,
Yeah.
in the truest sense, because I can scream and yell at my brother and my sister and like they still love me. They call me a dick or whatever, but maybe not talk for a week, but we still love each other and we still support each other and whatever. So it sounds like that's the true way. And I think if any young person is listening, and there will be, that they, just to hear from you guys what's important, I think is just, half the battle for these young people who are going into these, interviews going, what, how to dress, what to say, but like, I'm so fucking freaked out, So thank you for that. I think it's amazing. Kids, when we're born, we all we're artful and we think about colors and we are we can do anything and magic exists and dragons are real and all these kind of things. But as we get older, the pressure that comes with getting older and going to school, being rather a guy or a girl, and you kind of start losing all of those things that made you excited about life. So my question is what makes, what we want to fit in so much. And then of course we lose all that. So what is the very thing that makes you stand out? Like, what is the thing maybe that even from your childhood or even now, what is the one thing that, you feel makes you different from anybody else?
I want to kind of go with where you were going with how kids start off, right? They have this wild-eyed sense of curiosity, right? Dragons are real. Like I can draw magical faraway kingdoms, create characters, like anything goes. And then I think what happens is people start caring what other people actually think of what they're doing. And that inherently destroys the innocence and the beauty of the creative process, right? So if I could offer up one piece of advice to new creatives is stop giving a flying fuck what other people think about your work. Just put what you believe to be true into the world. And that is how you find true creativity. That is how you find a truly original voice, because people forget, like, the definition of creativity is something truly original, right? I had a realization where I realized that advertising isn't that creative anymore. It's a manifestation of similar themes, right? The work we love largely looks kind of similar. And then something comes along and completely breaks frame. That's real creativity. So just stop thinking, caring what other people think. We're humans. We like to feel good. We like to have acknowledgement and we care about what other people think. But if we can shut those voices out for the most part, we will really hopefully realize our true creative self.
I love that. I mean, I think to go one step further, it's about not caring if you fit in. You know what I mean? It's better if you don't fit in. It's better that you are different, and unique.
I'll give it just one anecdote because I think it will land. I had a young creator who came to me and they were like, I can't do this, Rob. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do it? Like all the content people put out, I just can't do it. I can't do it like Sally. I can't do it like Jessica. I can't do it like Glenn. I'm like, newsflash, you don't have to. Just do what you think is right. Really? Yes, just do what you think is right for this brief. This creator went away, came back, showed me what they thought was right for the brief. Newsflash, I didn't like it. I was like, what the fuck is this? I didn't say that, right? That was my old industry self coming in. I applauded. I said, make it, put it out. Made it, put it out. The internet fucking ate it up, hook, line, and sinker. And that creator is one of our best creators now at Vayner Media.
Wow.
Who just does their own thing, unbridled, uninhibited, no fear.
Yeah. Wow. I love that.
Do you know what's interesting as well? So that, well, the thing I was talking about with Oliver just previous to this was that I've read some kind of very basic psychology. A psychologist might actually tell me this is all total rubbish that I'm saying here, but essentially you have like this primal brain, which really has a kind of instinct to not stand out from the crowd. So it's as you grow up, you kind of lean into this primal brain of like, you know, fit in, and you won't get attacked, you won't, you know, lose your friends, all of that stuff. But
blend, yeah.
Blend.
And essentially there is a way to teach yourself out of that behavior, because the way our mind works is that we go back to learned memories of like, oh, I remember that time when I was, you know, I felt out of place, or people didn't like my idea and all of that. But it's, if you're able to teach yourself new experiences in terms of like a time when you have done something totally different and people loved it, you can then start to use that as a device to help yourself stand out more. So I think some people sometimes think, oh, I'm just not one of those extrovert people that does crazy weird stuff. I don't think you have to be. And I think there's a way you can almost teach yourself out of that, you know, guarded behavior.
Love.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that. That's great, Phoebe. And what about you, Jay?
I think it's really important that creatives understand that you don't need to know, don't let lack of knowledge stop you from trying. I think that has been a big lesson, and I hope more creatives take, I mean, nothing will, the stars will never perfectly align. You will not know everything on earth before you just got to like try something. And try something could be like pitching an idea. It could be starting a business. It could be like whatever. I don't have an MBA, but I found a really great partner who's a strategist, and we started Haymaker, and we had a lot of blind spots, but we kind of like try to do it the best we can. You just have to take the leap at some point. So I think don't let lack of knowledge stop you. You'll learn a lot along the way. And I think that's really important for creatives to, you know, understand and kind of keep with them as they continue to grow.
Wow. I love that too. Guys, I love you guys for taking the time. I have to admit that prior to getting on with you guys, and even last night, I was doing a little research, and I looked at you two guys and I was like, God, they're like real dudes. Like, are they gonna like think I'm like being a mamsy-pamsy with like, who's at a dinner party? Who would you invite? You know, I had this fear that you guys were gonna like, you know, ridicule me for like stupid questions. And to tell you the truth, the heart that you brought and the passion and the realistic like moments have been fucking riveting to me. And I hope that everybody sees that from you guys and enjoys it and appreciates it. Which I'm sure they will. So thank you guys, Rob and Jay, and Phoebe, my co-host. Thank you as well. We're very, very proud to have met you guys today.